The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which is essentially taking a primary role in re-establishing the power grid in Puerto Rico, is saying that there is now some progress because they ordered certain parts that they needed, and they should get those parts in the coming weeks. And maybe, if we're lucky, they'll finish the construction by late February, early March. So let me give you the details on that. The Army Corps of Engineers argued that, look, this is an old power structure, power grid, I should say. It's much older than what you would experience in the mainland. And so as a result, we had to go through quite a bit to get the parts that we needed. But more than 40% of Puerto Rico's power customers remain in the dark nearly 4 months after the Category 4 storm hit the island.
4 months. Wow.
4 months. I mean, think about how outraged Americans would be if that were the case in Houston, Florida, or in
if it was
Texas.
A week.
If it was
right. 4 months. 4 months is permanent, basically. That is forever. Imagine being a child and it's 4 months without power. I mean, power is not a luxury. It is essential for almost every area of life at this point.
So students just went back to school in Puerto Rico, and a lot of these schools still don't have power, but the kids needed to go back to school. They already have missed out on so much, and so they're just gonna have to make do with what they have. Only 20% of intersections with stoplights have been powered. That's how dire the situation really is. Now let's get to the missing parts that are supposed to be coming in coming weeks. So the lack of some of those hard to find pieces had delayed energizing certain lines, which included transformers, splices, and hundreds of a key small piece no longer in stock elsewhere. Just to give you an idea of Puerto Rico's energy infrastructure and how much it differs from the rest of the United States, it's about 44 years old compared with an average of 18 years on the US mainland. And also, most of the island should have power by the end of February or early March, but a complete restoration could actually take until May.
Which would have meant 9 months without power in some areas.
Yeah, it's a devastating situation. And remember, in the beginning, there was a very shady contract given to a small company that only had 2 employees, full-time employees at least. It was an extremely expensive contract, so they ended up terminating it after it got a lot of criticism in the media. And now there's all this. I don't know how much of what the Army Corps of Engineers is saying is truthful. I wouldn't be surprised if their energy infrastructure is older than the United States and they no longer make or manufacture some of these parts. But still, it just seems as though things are moving very slowly for the people of Puerto Rico, and I feel terrible for them.
Yeah. The number that stood out to me was they've ordered 6,000 transformers, and transformers are essential to spreading it, basically, to spreading the energy. And of those, just over 400, I don't remember the exact number, of 6,000 in 4 months have arrived on the island. So they're not going to be able to do anything until those transformers are, really up to 6,000 if that's what they need. I mean, it's unbelievable. So it's not just what's going on the ground. I almost feel for the Army Corps because they're the ones that go in there and do this. If you don't have the equipment, you can't do the work you're there. If you don't have the poles, you cannot put the poles up and start running the wire. It's horrendous.
Yeah, and if you don't have the political backing to make it happen in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, so they're there. Some transformers have been ordered. Could they be ordered in a way that makes it faster? Could it be prioritized? It almost certainly could, but it's not. I mean, if the White House wanted, they want to talk about infrastructure this year. If they wanted to show how great they are at building stuff, here's an amazing opportunity that you could right a terrible environmental wrong while making the lives of a lot of people a lot better. American citizens, they could go in and they could do that. This could be like our short-term Apollo project. We could hit this thing and fix it. But instead, this is, as many people have pointed out, Donald Trump's Katrina. But it's his Katrina that nobody really cares about. Very few people talk about it. It's not getting discussed in government. And it's believed that over 1,000 people, either immediately or as a result of the flooding and all that, have died. American citizens, and it's silence for month after month after month.
I think part of the problem is that most people, I don't want to say most people because I don't know what the numbers are, but based on what I've seen from our politicians, there doesn't seem to be this notion that Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. They don't get perceived as U.S. citizens, even though they are. And I think that mentality is what is contributing to the slow developments in Puerto Rico right now. But there's another political component to this that I really want to touch on because it's very important and it shows you just how far Republicans are willing to go to exploit a terrible situation and try to get ahead politically. Now, it's clear that there have been hundreds of thousands, if not more, Puerto Ricans who have left the island and they are now seeking refuge in U.S. states. Florida being the first state that they go to for obvious reasons. Now there have been as many as 300,000 Puerto Ricans who went to Florida, many of whom I should say settled in Central Florida. And there is an organization that's funded by the Koch brothers that is offering them services to get back on their feet. But even though they're saying we're a nonprofit organization and we're not trying to do anything for political reasons, what's going on behind the scenes makes it appear very different from what they're alleging. So it's known as the Libre Institute. It's an offshoot of the Libre Initiative, a group backed by the billionaire Koch brothers, and it's launching new outreach programs this week in the Orlando area designed to provide English language courses and civics lessons to thousands of Puerto Ricans living at least temporarily in Central Florida as the island continues rebuilding. So state officials are greeting Puerto Ricans arriving at airports in the state, and they're referring to the Libre program for assistance. So they're coming to Florida. Republican politicians are getting in touch with them and letting them know about this program. Florida also faces an open gubernatorial race, a competitive re-election fight for Senator Bill Nelson, who's a Democrat, and a handful of congressional races that could tip the balance of power in the House of Representatives. And so I want to be clear about something. There's the Libre Institute and then the Libre Initiative. The Libre Initiative is not a nonprofit, and they're very obvious and clear about their political agenda. The Libre Institute, they say, is their nonprofit arm and that they don't try to politicize anything. But from what I've read, they emphasize things like, oh, the free market and this and that. And so they're trying to, set these essentially Puerto Rican refugees up to support their party.
I went to two in the 2016 election during the primaries. I guess it was during the primaries. I went to two Libre Initiative workshops, one in Nevada and one in Florida. And I don't know about the Libre Institute, and maybe some of these workshops were set up by the Institute. I don't remember that, but it was all part of the Libre Initiative. They had their convention that I wasn't able to go to in New Mexico then. And what they do is they invite new Americans in, quote unquote new Americans that they wish weren't here, and they give them because they're very scared about the growing Latino influence in politics and population. Right. And so what they want to do is, because their politics so adversely affect these incoming immigrants, so much so that they're fought, they want to at least make sure that they are welcoming on the ground. So it's like a welcome wagon where they help them with voter registration. They help them with driver's license registration. They help them fill out forms to apply for apartments and background checks for dwelling. And it was a fascinating thing to see. And then they do talk about America, and they talk about where you can get information in America and things like that. It's clearly trying to say that we are this group, and we are this group that is associated not directly with the politics, but with the politics of the Republican Party, but then we can guide you in that direction.
Right, and they have been criticized in the past for passing out political literature that they're not supposed to be passing out.
They didn't do when I was there, but I knew that they did it every other day.
Right, I mean, look, the Koch brothers are not funding this out of the goodness of their hearts because they want to help refugees from other countries.
Right.
I mean, there is a political agenda there, it's as clear as day. And it's interesting to see how it's gonna play out because From what I know of Puerto Ricans, they usually don't lean right wing like Cubans do.
And Cubans don't really anymore either. I mean, the new Cubans.
The younger Cubans don't.
Obama
Older
won
Cubans
Cuba.
certainly do.
Obama in 2012 won the Cuban vote, and that was, that was only 5-6 years ago now. So
in 2012.
In 2012, yeah. In the Cuban vote in Florida, yeah.
Fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
It's a very changing demographic, and well, as you said, the Puerto Rican vote generally is already there, and it's big in Florida and New Jersey.
You just watched the video by the Young Turks, the home of the revolution. If you'd like to get the full show, come join us and become a member. tytnetwork.com/join.